Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 3rd. Welcome to the Ways and Means Bill hearing. I am Vice Chair Jessica Feldmark. Chair Wilkins will be joining us later, but want to go ahead and get started. And first up, we have House Bill 1148, Property Taxes, Tax Sales Heirs Protection Program, and Tax Credits. Welcome to the Ways and Means. Delegate Kaiser, if you can join us, and whoever is online, if you can turn your volume off. Thank you. And Delegate Kaiser, I do believe you have a sponsor panel if you want them to join, or are they? Oh, okay.
Who else?
Bill Steinman, Maryland Legal Aid.
I think it's just you.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
But come closer. I mean, you guys are going to come up next, I think. Yeah. All right. Well, that was quick. It's about to call you Madam Chair, and now it's Madam Chair. Thank you all very much. Delighted to be here today to speak on behalf of House Bill 1148. Congratulations again, Chair Wilkins. Good to be here with the distinguished members of the Ways and Means Committee. And I have this bill today for property taxes, tax sales, heirs protection program, and tax credits. And it's designed to protect heirs from losing their family homes in tax sale during the inheritance process. Madam Chair, and a few people up there in the front row with you have known that for like the last 10 years I've been doing bills related to tax sales and the predatory nature of the tax sale process and trying to help keep people in their homes. And this is just one extension of it. I did also want to say thank you to Madam Chair in the timing of my hearing today. My advocates who are here have to run across the street for the same bill in the Senate. So thank you again for allowing that. So let me explain a few things about the bill, and then hopefully it gets to your subcommittee and you can dig deep into the issues. But keeping it at the higher level, we're trying to establish the heirs protection program, which fixes a gap in our property tax system. And it's ensuring that heirs are eligible for homeowners and homestead tax credits. It also requires our state tax sale ombudsman to publish more information about the program. And to be clear, when an heir gets a house, if you already own a home, this doesn't necessarily apply. But sometimes adult children live in their parents' homes and they inherit that home, but they are not aware of maybe some bills that are behind and then they don't get into the program. They're not told about other tax credit programs. And I'm of the belief in all of government that we create a lot of great programs. We don't always connect the dots and get them to the people who need them the most. And that's part of what this bill is doing. I'd like to think that this bill hits it all: affordability, accountability, and opportunity, Madam Chair. Home ownership, of course, is one of the most powerful tools for building economic security and generational wealth. The need for reform is well documented, and I think you'll hear it not just from my panel, and I don't know if Ms. Randall showed up yet, and she can come up here as well. But there's enough evidence of the challenges. This is particularly a challenge for Black Americans in terms of building equity in their homes. So I want to just say a few things in the end. This bill is going to help families avoid probate. It's going to keep people in their homes. It provides customer service. It helps achieve racial justice. I'll throw in affordability, accountability, and opportunity one more time in all the ways it helps people. The State Department of Assessment and Taxation originally opposed this bill, and we did some work with them and had some good conversations. I'm not sure if the amendment has been officially shared with you, but the amendment is designed to do two things, and I believe with that, they will support the bill. The first is a delayed implementation date of 1 year. And then secondly, we already have a homeowners protection plan through SDAT, and this would be the heirs protection plan. And they don't want two HPPs, seriously. And you know what? They're not wrong. And so I try to use ChatGPT. I try to have a little fun with it. I had no luck. I welcome all of you to think of what else something like this should be called. And I was trying to think, we add a few vowels, do we make it hippo? But that doesn't seem nice. So I'm really not sure what the answer is, but I add that for some levity at the end, that no doubt we should change the name so the initials are different, because why would we create a new barrier to confuse people? But anyway, wrapping that up, Madam Chair, thank you again, and I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1148.
Hello, my name is William Steinwhittle. I'm the Deputy Advocacy Director for the Homeownership Preservation at the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau, and we thank Delegate Kaiser for the invitation to testify on this bill, and we thank the committee for allowing us to testify on this bill. We submitted written testimony as well, and along with the National Consumer Law Center, and we did attach some hyperlinks about some informative articles that the committee may want to read about this issue nationwide, and both nationwide and in Maryland. But I just briefly wanted to talk about two cases that I've handled over the years that I think demonstrate the importance of this issue. The first is a few years ago, we represented somebody in Howard County. The two people in title, one had passed away in 1962, and one had passed away in 1986. This was a property that was worth over $500,000 and was at risk when we got involved in the case of being sold at tax sale for just a few $1,000s. The owner of the home, the person that occupied the home, was the daughter of the original owners. She suffered from severe physical and mental illness, and she actually had a person appointed to help her, rep payee, who was not doing their job. We were able to get involved, get her assistance, and prevent the house from being lost. However, we know that this is not the only person in the state of Maryland that is facing this issue. In addition, we have over the years had to assist clients in recording deeds in properties that they inherited from heirs. And it could be quite a Kafkaesque process to record a deed in Maryland. You have to make sure the water bill is cured. You have to make sure that all liens are cured. So this could be even difficult for an attorney to handle, and almost impossible for a person to handle without an attorney. So that, for those two reasons and those cases, Maryland Legal Aid testifies in strong support of House Bill 1148.
Thank you so much. And Madam Vice Chair, I do want to take a moment to thank you for your stewardship over this committee and all that I've been able to learn from you and your leadership. So very good to see you here, and for you championing the issue of tax sales has been so important. So thank you. I do see at least one question from Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for the bill and all of your work on tax sales. Just wondering if you can just speak to kind of the income demographics of the heirs that would be subject to this program. I think I saw that there's a dollar threshold on the value of the homes, but if you can just, you or your witness could speak through that about kind of the types of Marylanders by income that would be qualifying for this.
I believe this really applies to any heir, and I don't think I defined it well enough, that heir's property is property that's legally owned by an heir under the terms of a will or trust. However, the probate process has not been completed for the estate and the deed has not yet been recorded in the heir's name. So there's not an income threshold.
Any other questions for this panel?
And please keep looking for a good name for it.
We'll work on that. Thank you so much, Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, we do have others who signed up favorable on this bill. Allison Harris, Stephen Kappen, William Steinwhedel, Russell Donnelly, if you're here.
I already testified.
Okay, whoops, okay, no, disregard. I think we called Claudia Wilson Randall and Jennifer Bevan Dangle.
Hi, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Stephen Coppin with the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service, and we're testifying in favor of this bill. And the main reason is that I am actually the Tangle Title Project Manager at the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. We're a pro bono agency. And this means that I am working to help heirs resolve this title issue every single day. I'm helping people through the process of probate, helping them try to get these homes into their names, people with very low income. So we are very excited about this bill because this bill is working to fix this very specific problem. And like the delegate was saying, Delegate Kaiser was saying earlier, it helps open opportunity and it helps fix issues that are ongoing. So one of the things I wanted to zoom in is that there's a requirement in Maryland, as a previous speaker was saying, that you have to have no public charges on your property. So part of the bill that helps people navigate this issue is critically important. They also can't navigate that bill using their equity because they are heirs. So there's this loop, there's a negative feedback loop where people get stuck in this quagmire. Also, I wanted to speak about a client situation that I was currently working on. One of our clients is the exact type of person who this bill would help. She lives alone, is an heir, over 60, and she's also disabled with mobility issues. She faced a tax sale situation where she wasn't able to pay her property tax bill. And the reason that she went into the tax sale was that she was actually in a coma. So she couldn't pay the bill because she physically could not go pay the bill because, once again, she was in a coma. She was facing the reason she couldn't get title in her name is because she was facing a litany of other tax-based issues to transferring that deed. So that's another one of the things that accessing these property tax credits and accessing this program would help heirs actually solve this issue. So we're in support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Bevan Dangle. I'm the Deputy Director at Economic Action Maryland Fund. This issue of homeowners needing the homeowners tax credit to help them pay off what can sometimes be very small taxes owed on their property is critically important. Economic Action Maryland Fund started an entire program just to help older adults know that these tax credits exist, apply and receive these tax credits. There is a tremendous lack of understanding and awareness around these programs, and we have all suffered a loss. We lost my father-in-law last year. When you're already dealing with a loss with the passage of estates and properties, there is so much happening. The last thing that people are going to do is go searching for assistance that could help them get out of a difficult situation. So this bill, by making it much easier, much more automatic to be aware of these programs, to get this type of assistance, would do tremendous good to these potential heirs who are struggling to hold on to family property after death. To the delegate's question, while there's no cap on who can, sort of participate under this bill, there are income caps under the homeowner's tax credit itself. So to qualify for the homeowner's tax credit, your maximum income is $60,000 and your maximum net worth is $200,000. That does exclude retirement and the main principal home itself. So we are talking about a segment of the population that is the most at risk, the most in need of the tax credits that could be provided upon this legislation. So we urge a favorable report.
Thank you so much. We have a virtual witness who will also let in before we go to the next round of questions.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can proceed.
Okay.
Thank
Hi,
you.
my name is Alexis Burrell-Rody. I'm the Register of Wills for Baltimore County, and I'm here just as an informational witness. I am the president of the Register of Wills Association, but this was frankly not on our radar screen, so I'm here myself, and I'm here to provide any kind of information or guidance. And my concern with the way this bill is drafted is that the proponent said that it would help avoid probate, but I don't see how that's really true given the way the bill is drafted. There really isn't a way. I don't think this bill plays very well with Maryland probate law, and there needs to be some better coordination, or else this isn't going to have the desired effect or impact that I believe the committee wants it to have. And I think it's a great piece of legislation that would really help Marylanders, but it doesn't help you avoid probate. Also, heirs, when they're heirs and there is an open estate, they don't own the house that's in the estate. They have an interest in the estate. So there's this layer of fiduciary obligation. So if the house is owned by an estate, so that's whether there's a will or intestate, you mentioned trust, but I can't see this really coming up too often in the case of a trust. It's going to be up to that fiduciary to provide for those tax credits and not the heirs themselves. So I think there's just a few things that maybe should be ironed out with a thought towards the way Maryland probate law works, so that this is really going to have the effect of helping homeowners receive these, or helping heirs receive these tax credits. So I just wanted to offer that as some food for thought, and to let the committee know that I am here to help work out any of these remaining questions, but I do have some concerns. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll ask you to please reach out to the bill sponsor so that you can work together. I see Ms. Claudia just walked in. We called you, so come on up and please do give your favorable testimony.
Wow. Deep breath. Good afternoon, Ways and Means Committee. My name is Claudia Wilson-Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland, and I'm happy to be here in strong support of this bill. It is incredibly important that we figure out strategies that help particularly women of color stay in their homes. And you have my written testimony on this bill and other bills today. Unfortunately, I am just running too many things going on, so I will be over in the budget committees testifying, so I didn't sign up to testify orally on all of the bills, but I think anything we can do to strengthen the homeowner protection program and give them the tools that they need in order to raise the threshold as assessments have gone up and really help to protect homeowners. We don't have any excess volume of affordable housing in the state of Maryland. So if people fall out, there's no other place for them to go right now in this market. So strategies that help more people age in place are incredibly important. And with there, I'll stop. So thank you so much for allowing me to testify, as I have been running around today.
Thank you. You made it just in time, so thank you. Before we go to questions, I'll just do one more call of individuals that I called before that we haven't heard from. I believe that's Allison Harris, Russell
She's sick.
Donnelly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go to questions. Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question I have is, when we have this situation go to an heir, if a person dies and it's passed on to the heirs, does that automatically trigger a reassessment of the property value?
You want to answer? Okay.
I'll take this one. I do not believe that it automatically triggers a reassessment of the property value
Okay.
when it transfers out of the estate.
Okay. The other thing is, what about life estates? Do you all talk about life estates? I think it would cure a lot of the problems that we're having with these cases.
Yes, absolutely. At the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service and in our program, we definitely talk to clients about life estate deeds. But obviously, a life estate deed only helps preventatively. It doesn't help once you are actually within an estate, because a life estate has to be executed by a living person prior, while they're alive. So it's a preventative measure that we are talking to clients about every day, but it doesn't help rectify once we're actually opening an estate and someone has passed.
Well, I was just thinking it'd be proactive if they had a life estate that would take away a lot of these problems. I've seen a lot of times, and I'll give you a real short story, where we have, I call them pariahs, they're sharks, come and take advantage of our seniors like that. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other questions on this bill? All right, seeing none, this ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1148. Thank you so much, Delegate, for the bill. Next up, House Bill 1232, Delegate Edelson. And I'd like to welcome to the Ways and Means Committee, the Mayor of Baltimore City, my good friend, Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, colleagues. It's great to see all of you. For the record, I'm Delegate Mark Edelson here presenting House Bill 1232. I am proud to sponsor this bill in partnership with the City of Baltimore, the Baltimore Development Corporation, the Mayor's Office, and a broad coalition of downtown stakeholders committed to Baltimore's continued economic recovery and long-term competitiveness. At its core, this legislation establishes a targeted downtown pilot designated to accelerate revitalization, support small business growth, and strengthen the economic vitality of Baltimore's central business district. Downtown Baltimore is a critical economic engine for the region and the state. Like many urban cores across the country, it is navigating post-pandemic shifts in office utilization, retail patterns, and foot traffic. This bill provides the city with an important tool to respond strategically and proactively. What this pilot will do is that it will allow the City of Baltimore to attract and retain businesses and investment, support small and locally owned businesses, increase downtown foot traffic and activity, strengthen the tax base and long-term economic resilience, and advance equitable, inclusive growth in the city's core. This is a focused, data-driven approach that allows us to test strategies, measure outcomes, and scale what works. The timing of this bill is particularly important. As we all know, cities across the country are competing aggressively to reposition their downtowns for the future of work and commerce. This is not a blip, this is a future. Baltimore has strong assets, from our location and infrastructure to our growing innovation and creative economy. This pilot helps us ensure we remain competitive and proactive rather than reactive. This effort is fully aligned with the city's broader downtown revitalization and economic development priorities. It reflects close collaboration between the General Assembly delegation, the Mayor's Office, the BDC to deploy smart, targeted tools that drive measurable impact. This bill received a unanimous vote in the Baltimore City delegation last Friday, so I would urge a favorable report, and at this time I'll turn it over to the Mayor of the great city of Baltimore, Mayor Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Ms. Deckler. Thank you, Madam Chair. Always good to see you, my good friend, Vice Chair and members of the committee, in particular, my two delegates that are on the committee. As you heard from the delegate, as you know, I'm the mayor of the great city of Baltimore. I'm here to testify in staunch support of HB 1232. This legislation will help Baltimore tackle an issue that, while not unique to our city, but requires unique, creative solutions to address. Like many cities across the country and really across the world, we are facing the reality of a post-COVID commercial real estate downturn. Folks are just not in the office like they used to be, which means more vacant office buildings and lower property values in the heart of our city. In the most recent reassessment alone, downtown properties lost more than $326 million in value. One building on Redwood Street lost 70% of its value alone. This raises hard questions for the city, for the state, and for commercial property owners. In recent years, I've heard directly from developers who own properties who say, as it stands, it is not worth it for them to redevelop these properties. For the health of the entire city and our state, we have to make it worth it. And we have to be very clear. When downtown Baltimore loses nearly $12 million a year in property tax revenue, that also means that we have less sales tax revenue in Baltimore City, all of which comes to the state of Maryland. That money doesn't just disappear from a downtown budget. It disappears from the same city general fund that pays for rec centers and Bella Edisons and after-school programs in Park Heights. So I tasked my leadership team and our economic development partners to identify creative, targeted, responsible solutions to spur downtown development. Together, we developed the Downtown Rise Master Plan, which our Planning Commission unanimously approved. We have a comprehensive strategy and the right folks in place to execute it. But we still need state enabling authority to deploy this tool. Philadelphia has this tool. Our hated Pittsburgh has this tool. Baltimore deserves the same ability to compete for investment and build the stronger, more vibrant downtown that we all know is possible. And for these reasons, I request a favorable report on HB 1232. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions? Delegate Young.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here. Always a pleasure. Can you just give us a high level on that master plan that you just lifted up, just so we can get a sense of where this pilot program would be going and how it would impact the city?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Delegate. When you think about a downtown rise, you're thinking about obviously the areas that everyone thinks about, right? The areas around the stadium, Harbor Place, where the inner harbor is, but also things like the Science Center and the aquarium. But it also includes the areas around Lexington Market, when University of Maryland is. So it's about really uplifting the entirety of downtown. And it's not just about the buildings. It's about the infrastructure, what things are there. Downtown is our fastest growing residential neighborhood. All of that has to be brought into play when you think about making a downtown for the future. What we had in the past was great for the past, but we're now living in a different time, and we have to make sure that downtown is rising to the moment of living, of understanding and recognizing that, which is why we're doing it this way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions on this bill? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1232. Next up, House Bill 1243, Prince George's County Delegation, Delegate Roberson presenting.
Congratulations. Thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleague did not get a chance to register for the bill, but to testify, but she is here to answer questions as it may come up. And give me a moment. I grabbed the wrong folder. Sorry. I see. Pay attention. All right, we're back. Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence. Now let me make sure I'm in the right place at the right time. I'm doing House Bill 1243. Good afternoon, Ways and Means Committee. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. It's so good to see you all on today. I thought I was done testifying about bills, but you know, when you're ready to serve, people call you up at any time of the day. So nonetheless, we'll be testifying on HB 1243 on behalf of the Prince George's County Delegation, which deal with personal property tax exemption for small manufacturers. And this legislation would exempt all personal property in the possession of a person engaged in a manufacturing business with 50 or fewer employees from the personal property tax in Prince George's County. Just a little background, current law in Prince George's states that it imposes property taxes on both real and personal property, and there are exemptions available for businesses with less than $20,000 in personal property, including inventory. However, the county does not currently provide a personal property tax exemption based on the number of employees a business has. So this legislation would allow for small manufacturing businesses with 50 or fewer employees to benefit from reduced tax liabilities. The funds saved from this reduced tax liability could then be used by the small business for other purposes. The legislation would foster small businesses in Prince George's and support their economic growth and development. For these reasons, we urge, on behalf of the Prince George's County Delegation, a favorable report on House Bill 1243. And my colleague here is here from Denizens, which is a small business in Prince George's County that would benefit directly. And thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. She's allowing you to speak, so we'll take advantage.
Thank you, Delegate.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the time to be here. I did submit formal written testimony for this, so I'm going to be a little bit more casual here. Essentially, this is a bill that I have been asking for. This is the third year I've been up to Annapolis about this. The personal property tax, because we are a small manufacturer, I have to own equipment that's in the millions of dollars, and that equipment is not exempt from the personal property tax every year. And so when I get a bill every year from the county for personal property tax, because the manufacturing equipment is exempt on the county level, it's a couple $1,000s, because I obviously own other things, right? Then I get the bill from the town, and you're looking at $18,000, $20,000. And as a small business, I cannot afford that. I literally just don't have the money to pay that. And it's, again, I don't think the intent of this was to make small businesses like mine pay a huge tax. And I'm not against paying taxes. I want to pay my fair share, but my fair share only. Right now, it is just too much for me to handle. And I can tell you, I do have a colleague, it's a married couple. They own a beer brand. They actually live in Prince George's County, and they're looking to open a brick and mortar location, and they are not looking at Prince George's County right now because of this tax situation. There is absolutely direct consequences when tax policy is encouraging people to divest as opposed to invest. You know, I've, in the last couple of years, been actively selling off equipment that I don't need at all. Like, if I don't use it every week, then like, I don't need it. And I'm doing that to reduce my tax bill. And it's not, anyway, I am asking for a favorable vote on this. This is very specific to Prince George's County. This is not a statewide bill. And I really appreciate the support, and thank you for everyone here for what you do for the state. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I'm Julie Verratti. I'm one of the owners and operators of Denizens Brewing Company. We've been in business for 12 years and have about 25 employees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions on this bill? All right, seeing none, thank you, Delegate. That ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1243. Next up, House Bill 1224.
And thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make you aware I'm joined by the counsel for the Prince George's County Council, who is here to answer any technical questions. But I also, following in the steps up, I just learned that I have a mentor on the committee in the footsteps of Delegate Edith Patterson, who has deemed herself my mentor, and I appreciate that. I am going to allow my intern to speak as she does so often, allow her interns to present bills. So our intern will present on House Bill 1224, but for the record, Delegate Kent Roberson here on House Bill 1224.
Good afternoon, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I'm Zarina Glaster. I'm a second-year honors student studying public policy at the University of Maryland, College Park. And today I'm here on behalf of the Prince George's County delegation to testify on House Bill 1224. House Bill 1224 would allow the Prince George's County delegation to establish a special property tax rate on vacant and abandoned properties. Through raising taxes on these properties, homeowners would be encouraged to fix or sell them, improving the overall character of their communities. Vacant and abandoned properties can often serve as eyesores within communities. They diminish the quality of life for residents, take away from the appeal of the neighborhood, put strain on public resources, and lower the neighborhood's ability to thrive. The revenue raised from increasing taxes will go into the county's general fund, which would support the county's financial, housing, and community reinvestment efforts to better serve those that they represent. House Bill 1224 would empower Prince George's County to address the ongoing issue of neglected, vacant, and abandoned properties, all while supporting the needs of the communities. For these reasons, I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1224. Thank you.
Excellent job, and thank you for your testimony. I have Kevin Canale also signed up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I could not do a better job explaining the bill. I will just say Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of this bill. Counties support this bill because it authorizes charter counties to deal with properties that undermine home values, they are nuisance properties, and they strain local services and ultimately reduce property values. So we think this is a great bill. We need tools in the toolbox to address these types of properties. Just a few years ago, you passed a bill to enable a vacancy tax. Unfortunately, we're here today because of a charter cap. I don't think that was ever the intent of voters when voting to do that, to address these types of properties. This is not broad authority, it's very limited, and again, it's to address these nuisance properties. So we'd ask for a favorable report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for this panel? Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for the bill. Maybe this question's for Kevin. Just to clarify, in spite of this bill being sponsored by the Prince George's County delegation, this is not specific to Prince George's County. Is that right? There's other counties that would be impacted?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for
This would apply to all charter counties, this enabling authority.
Oh, Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And following up to that, so with it impacting the other counties, did you reach out to them to see if they were in support of this? So did you reach out to Wycomico? Did you reach out to any of the other counties?
I won't speak for the sponsor. I will say that MACO is here representing all of those counties, and we are supporting the bill. But I can't speak to individual jurisdictions.
So individually, the county exec from Wycomico said she supports this?
So we don't, unfortunately, I can't divulge individual votes. You're happy to speak with the county executive. I don't recall this bill, there's much debate. It is enabling, so typically MACO will come in and support bills that enable counties to take certain actions. We don't like mandates, but enabling bill like this, it wouldn't require Wycomico to do anything under the bill.
I was just curious if the other counties that were impacted, if you reached out to them, and it doesn't sound like it. Thank you.
Any other questions on this bill? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Delegate. That ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1224.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And can we just give a hand for our
Next up, House Bill 1273.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. I am Delegate April Miller here today to present House Bill 1273, the Maryland Homeowner Protection and Homestead Tax Credit Portability Act of 2026. Maryland homeowners are facing a perfect storm of economic pressures. While property values have risen, the resulting tax assessments have become a primary driver of Maryland's affordability crisis. This legislation addresses a critical affordability gap for Marylanders by doing two things: lowering the homestead cap, it reduces the maximum allowable homestead tax credit percentage from 110 to 105%, and establishing the portability aspect, which is allowing homeowners to carry their hard-earned tax relief with them when they move to a new primary residence, ensuring they aren't taxed out of downsizing or relocating within our state. Maryland homeowners currently have a property tax crisis fueled by the historic spikes in real estate values. And while rising home values are generally a sign of a healthy market for the average family, they have translated into unsustainable tax burdens. In 2025, statewide assessments for Group 1 properties surged an average of 20.1%, with nearly 97% of residential properties seeing an increase. And in 2026, we saw the continued for Group 2 assessments that showed the average increase of 12.7%. And while it may be a slower pace than the previous year, it comes on the heels of years of double-digit growth, compounding the financial strain on Maryland families. And for many, particular seniors on a fixed income and young families, these astronomical assessments make Maryland increasingly unaffordable. And we're seeing a lock-in effect, where residents are afraid to sell their homes because of the property tax on a new or even smaller property would be significantly higher than their current protected rate. The homestead tax credit was designed to protect residents from being taxed out of their homes. However, the current 10% cap is no longer sufficient in the era of 20% assessment jumps. And so by lowering it to the 5%, no Marylander's taxable assessment will grow by that more than 5% in the single year, and it provides a predictable, stable ceiling that protects household budgets from volatile market swings. So currently, if a senior wanted to downside from their large family home, which we have a lot of them, that to like a smaller condo, they would lose their accumulated homestead credit. And they often find that the taxes on that smaller home or condo are higher than what they were paying in their larger home because of the assessment. The assessment resets to market value. So House Bill 1273 would fix that by allowing the portability of that credit up to $500,000 of the assessment. And this encourages mobility. It opens up starter homes then for new buyers, and it keeps our residents in Maryland. So we can't ignore the reality, I'm sure many of you hear about it when you're back in your district, that Maryland is becoming too expensive for the very people who built our communities. House Bill 1273 offers a common sense, bipartisan approach to property tax reform that prioritizes the homeowner over the tax collector. So, for example, in Frederick County, we saw residential assessments jump by 25% in a single cycle. And so even with our local 5% cap, the lack of portability creates what we would consider like a geographic prison for our seniors. They are likely to cash poor to move because of the moment they sell, their tax protection vanishes. So this would ensure that that protection would follow the person, not just the parcel of land. Maryland families shouldn't be punished for the rising value of their homes, and this bill ensures that a home remains an investment in their future, not a liability to their bank account. I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1273.
Thank you, Delegate. Question from Delegate Hartman.
Oh, no. I yield to...
So, do you know of any other states that do this?
Yes.
Such as?
Yes, California, actually, and that's, so this idea came, we have family that lived in the Bay Area, of course, very, very expensive, and they were actually going to move out of state, but the homestead portability that they do there actually allowed them to stay within California, and one of them is a retiree of the system there, so that kept those tax dollars in California versus having them go out to Idaho or another state, which is a big problem in California. So it really solves some issues out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Delegate. That ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1273. I see the next bill sponsor is not present, and I'm looking to see who we can go with. Delegate Hornberger, if you're ready, we'll take your bill, House Bill 1302.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have a suite of bills here, so we'll go ahead and get started with 1302. For the record, Delegate Kevin Hornberger. And I'm here presenting property tax credit. This is for disabled, public safety, and judicial officers, surviving spouses, and cohabitants eligibility. So what this bill does is basically clarifies who's eligible for this tax credit. We've had some issues here in the recent past, where, as many of you know, I personally myself worked on the Hill for many years. Many of the folks that work in DC government, for example, live in Maryland. And there's been some ambiguity about do their spouses qualify for these tax credits. This bill would basically clarify that they could be a public safety or judicial officer, and basically removes all of the confusion about this. We did have a constituent who kind of got caught up in this. That's why we're bringing the bill forward. And if you look, it doesn't really have a fiscal note, again, because this is already taking place. It just seems to clarify what's going on with the tax credit. And you'll see that the other big thing that this does is it removes the 5-year residency requirement. So if you look on page 3 of the actual text of the bill, that part is removed. You still have to you still have to be a resident. You still have to have 10 years since the retirement, but it just makes it easier and clarifies so people can apply and get this credit. With that, I'd love to take questions. Panel up here as well.
Thank you, Chair Wilkins, Vice Chair Feldmark, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Mark Cicero, and I am a disabled federal agent residing in Maryland. Appreciate the opportunity to submit this testimony in support of legislation to remove the 5-year residency requirement for disabled law enforcement officers seeking eligibility for the county property tax exemption. I was injured in the line of duty in February of 2010. Over the following 2 years, I underwent 3 back surgeries in an effort to relieve the pain caused by my injuries. While the procedure provided limited improvement, I was ultimately deemed permanently disabled and unable to return to work. Now, Maryland law currently allows disabled local and county police officers to qualify for a property tax exemption under Public Law 3-101E. In 2003, legislation was enacted to extend similar eligibility to disabled federal agents. However, the statute written includes a 5-year residency requirement for disabled public safety employees, judicial officers, and Capitol Police before they may access this benefit. Federal agents serve under unique circumstances. We are subject to deployment and assignment worldwide, often with little control over where we live at the time of injury. If an injury occurs while stationed outside of Maryland and the agent later chooses to settle here, the current law prevents them from qualifying for the exemption unless they'd already established 5 years of Maryland residency prior to the injury. In my case, I was living in Southern California when I was injured. During an extended federal disability process, I was required to remain in California for medical evaluations and treatment. After I was cleared to relocate, I followed my then wife, who was an active duty soldier, but ultimately settled in Maryland once I received custody of my son to be closer to family. I returned to Annapolis, where I was raised, and maintained lifelong ties to the community. Because I did not reside in Maryland for 5 years prior to my injury, I am ineligible for the existing exemption. So once a federal agent is designated as disabled, we receive a portion of our former salary. If we later obtain medical clearance to work in any capacity, any income earned is offset against our disability compensation for the remainder of our lives, regardless if that employment continues. This creates significant financial limitations for disabled federal officers seeking to rebuild their lives. Given Maryland's proximity to federal agencies and installations, it is a natural and desirable home for many current and former federal law enforcement officers. Removing the 5-year residency requirement would ensure equitable treatment for those who are injured in service to this country but happen to be stationed elsewhere in the time of injury. These men and women accepted extraordinary risks in the performance of their duties. I respectfully ask that you vote in favor of this nonpartisan legislation and allow it to become law. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your service and your testimony. Are there any questions for this panel? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on Hornberger Day, Bill number 1.
Yep.
House Bill 1302. We'll go to House Bill 1330 next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again for coming and testifying and sharing your story. Delegate Kevin Hornberger, HB 1330, Homeowners Property Tax Credit Year-Round Application. Very simple, very straightforward bill. I want to thank the co-sponsor. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation. One of my most trusted advisors over there, Delegate Wims. Thank you. This bill was a product of a briefing that we received earlier this session, whereas I posed the question about rolling enrollment. This is one of the last tax credits that has this statutorily defined cutoff period. And why that is a problem is because if folks are missing the deadline, if they're submitting a few days late, they're getting denied, right? And they're being told that they have to apply again the next year. Now, why is that such an issue? More often than not, these folks are elderly or you know, they have income requirements, thresholds, so they may not be gainfully employed. The reason that this is a problem I'm noticing in my community is you go and you try to help these individuals, you convince them to apply, and because of some small reason, they miss that window, and they believe that a denial means that only because of the time requirements that they can't get it, right? So there are real negative consequences for denying someone regardless of the reason, because that can be intimidating and they may not apply again. So I worked with SDAT to come up with this language. It basically counts them if they do come in after that threshold, that it could be applied for next year. I believe this is really important to keep folks in their homes, and I'd love to take any questions.
We do have Allison Harris, who had signed up favorable. I understand she's not in today.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make sure I called her name.
Number of written testimony in favor in your packet.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions on this bill? Delegate Roberson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. So you're saying that when they go to apply, they're denied, not necessarily, so the application window is still open. I know the window is officially closed, but the link is still there. You click on it and you get denied, not necessarily saying reapply at this time or date.
Correct. So if they come in late, so in other words, let's say they download the application.
Yep.
Takes them a little while to fill it out, or they're not really sure when they're supposed to submit it.
Right.
they put it in the wrong time frame, they get denied because they're past the yearly requirement to apply by.
And they're not sure like the reason for it. They just say denied, so they probably won't even reapply.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1330. Your third bill today, House Bill 1308, and you do have several people signed up favorably.
Yep.
I have Allison Harris, Russell Donnelly, Alexander Pappas, and Rod McMillan. So if any of you are here,
Yeah, come on up.
you can come on up, and Delegate, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. HB 1308, Homeowners Property Tax Credit, Eligibility and Calculations Alterations. So again, all of these bills are in the same posture. We want to keep people in their homes, and we want them paying an appropriate amount of tax on there, especially if they qualify because of disability or because of income thresholds. So why this bill is important. These caps that are currently set, which are very low, especially considering how we've had assessments go up over the last year, basically adjust this for inflation. And this is a number that has not been changed. This cap has not been changed since 2019. All right. Very straightforward. This is the homeowner's property tax credit. This keeps folks in their homes. And if you look at the fiscal note here, it's basically making adjustments for their net worth and the combined value of their home. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to the panel. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me thank the chair lady and the committee for looking at this bill. I think it's a very important bill. My name is Scott Pappas. I'm a state licensed engineer, and I'm the president of my community association, speaking on behalf of Fort Howard. I'm speaking on behalf of my sister living in Vice Chairman Feldmark's district. I'm speaking for my two sons who live in Delegates Addison and Young and Speaker of the House's district. And I'm also speaking for my brothers who live in Delegate Long's district. In 2006, Speaker Bush and Governor Ehrlich doubled the homeowner tax credit assessment and income caps from $150,000 to $300,000 to provide desperately needed property tax relief from homeowners being taxed out of their homes from the Wall Street housing bubble that doubled houses prices from 2001 to 2006. Like 2005, albeit slower, after 20 years of inflation, housing prices have again doubled. And like 2005, it is once again time to double the homeowner tax credit assessment and income caps to provide the desperately needed property tax relief. With the homeowner tax credit in 2005, property tax liability of a family with an income of $25,000 with a $300,000 home was $1,290. That same family living in that same home, now doubled in price from inflation, not improvements, pays $3,700 in property taxes simply because the homeowner tax credit did not keep pace with inflation. Inflation is the killer here. 18% of Marylanders age 65 and older have an average monthly income of $2,100, which is around $25,000 a year. 25% of Marylanders have a disability, and 50% of Marylanders live below the median income of $94,000, noting that the current homeowner tax credit cap is only $60,000, $30,000 below the median income. While in 2005, the $60,000 cap was the same as the median income at that time. Maryland has a 2026 $71 billion.
Sir, you're over your 2 minutes, so we do need you to wrap up. You can wrap up your thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. Maryland has a 2026 $71 billion budget adjusted for the House Bill 1308 increase in assessments and income caps. The homeowner tax credit will only cost 0.16% of the total budget. That's a little over 1/10 of 1%. Let me repeat that. 1/10 of 1% of the total budget for 2026. Marylanders.
We do need you to wrap, though. I gave you a little extra
Okay, you want to wrap it? Okay, I'm so sorry. I only had a paragraph to go. Let me close by at least saying that I thank the committee. I thank the committee and Mr. Hornberger. I apologize for running over.
No problem. That was great information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rod McMillian. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and delegates. I'm a twice elected Board of Education representative in Baltimore County. In fact, I'm a former colleague of Delegate Cheryl Pastor. I'm speaking as an individual this afternoon. I'm in favor of House Bill 1308. I live on a fixed income. Fortunately, I taught school in Baltimore County for 35 years, and I have a real good pension. However, there are many, many homeowners in Essex, Dundalk, and Sparrows Point who would benefit from this tax credit. For example, my next-door neighbor inherited his home from his parents approximately 15 years ago. He was in rehab last winter, and his baseboard heat pipes froze and burst. He lived this most recent winter in his home without heat. He's a very independent gentleman, and he wants to stay in his home. He has no income other than Social Security. He would definitely benefit from a tax credit, as would many other families in Essex, Dundalk, and Sparrows Point. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Pass the microphone over. Pass the microphone over.
Honored members, Madam Chair. My name is Russell Donnelly, Southeast Baltimore County, 21219, District 7 and District 6 County and State. Lived there my lifetime, steel babies. The properties have gone, in some cases, treble over the last 20 years due to the fact that Trade Point Atlantic coming into a major global hub to our area. It's economic boom, but all houses seem to have risen inordinately, and the taxes that we have to pay out, our credits to it have not kept abreast of that. And there are many, many seniors, more than young, in our areas down there. It's a golden age collective. So what we're asking is to adopt this bill, pass this bill, to give that balance in proportion to the rise in inflation, and also to save taxpayers money. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks to this panel for your time and testimony. Do we have any questions? All right.
Somebody's got to have one question.
Well, what I will say, there's a lot of written testimony that we'll hope you'll take a look at and move.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a favorable with amendment from Kevin Canale. So he'll come up, and the other witnesses can be excused.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of the bill with what I hope is a friendly amendment. MACO raises no qualms with altering the values of a state benefit. However, we do have several counties who recognize the importance of providing relief for homeowners with rising costs, and several counties provide their own supplemental credits. Many of them are tied to the value of the state credit. So we're just looking for clarification that changing the value in this bill will not automatically affect supplemental credits, and that those decisions on a local supplemental credit, any alteration would be subject to the local governing body and an affirmative action. So with that, we'd ask for a favorable with amendments, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1308. I do have Delegate Buckle next on the list, and then we'll get right to you, Delegate Arentz. Delegate Buckle, House Bill 1518.
I like it when Delegate Arentz is here.
I do see you have,
as long as possible.
You do have one person signed up, so let me look at who that is. Okay, this is on unfavorable, so we'll let you go first, and then we'll take the
Who would
unfavorable.
want to not change our property tax system, Madam Chair? I find it hard to believe.
Can't wait to find out.
I suspected someone with a MML or a MACO behind their name. Maybe. Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Jason Buckle, House Bill 1518. House Bill 1518. This is the Tax Committee. It's also the Education Committee. I have learned in 12 years in this committee, there's a lot of different reasons why people want to be in the committee. Some people like being here for education and don't like the taxes. Some people, I don't know who they may be, have the reverse perspective on it. But I think it's important to realize and understand what property taxes really are. Property taxes is you as an owner of a home, and that's really what I'm focused on more than anyone else, paying money to the government every year for the entirety of you owning that home for the privilege to own the home. And the theory is that the property taxes are used to provide amenities to the home. If you live in a neighborhood where you haven't had your street or your cul-de-sac or your sidewalk repaved or reconcreted for 15 years, you probably haven't gotten an awful lot of money spent directly for you. If you live in a neighborhood where you haven't had to use a lot of the physical services that property taxes support, you're probably wondering, what do I pay for every year? And the truth is, we're addicted to the revenue of property taxes, both at the state and particularly at the local level. They derive the larger portion of our property taxes. You pay regardless of whether you receive any value. You just pay. Every 3 years is our current assessment cycle, as we all know in this committee. And if you plan on being in your home for 20 years, you're not actually gaining anything when your property assessment goes up, because your neighbor across the street sold their home, they got their money, they paid their capital gains tax, and they moved to Florida, or they moved across town, or they unfortunately passed away and someone moved in next to them. They got some money for the value of the increase in their home. You didn't get anything. You just live in the same home. But you're going to be taxed more every year because of the rising assessments. The other issue that we've heard a lot, if you've been in this committee for several years, is that SDAT really has a difficult time conducting these assessments on a 3-year schedule, that they have to go out and for the hundreds of thousands of properties across the state, they have to do, to the best of their ability, an accurate reassessment every 3 years. 33.3% of the properties in the state are supposed to be looked at in one way or the other every year. And we continue to shift SDAT costs down to the counties because we can't afford to really do an effective assessment. We're just sort of spitballing. We're just sort of guessing what the numbers would be, and then you have to pay. What the bill does is it shifts from the property tax assessment to a 5-year schedule. Why did we come up with 3 years? Does anybody know? Nope. Because they did it a long, long time ago. They pulled 3 years out of the air and say, you know, we'll reassess you every 3 years instead of every 2 or every 4 or every 5 or every 10. It's just a number that some other people who sat in these rooms a long time ago came up with. What's wrong with 3 years versus 5 years? Nothing, except the fact that all the people who rely on the revenue streams believe that there won't be enough revenue for them because they won't be able to get your assessment every 3 years. It'll be every 5 years instead. One of the primary things that I hear from my constituents, and I think a lot of you hear from your constituents, is that it costs too much money to live in the state of Maryland. We just heard bills, we hear dozens of bills here every year about the homeowners' tax credits and ways to kind of diminish the effects of the rising assessments. But everyone continues to say, I pay too much in property taxes. Why wouldn't we just extend that to a 5-year cycle? It would help SDAT in saying that they could reduce the amount of properties that they have to assess every year from 33.3 down to 20%. It would lessen that burden. It would lessen the burden on most property owners that instead of every 3 years, almost without fail, anyone in this room, the people behind me, the people in front of me, if you own a property in the state of Maryland, every 3 years your bill goes up. Bill goes up every 3 years, like clockwork. And so this is simply an effort not to eliminate the property tax, not to restrain what counties and localities want to use as their rate, but simply to change the cycle in an effort to try to protect property owners more. I'd be happy if the committee had any interest to amend the bill to just limit it to homeowners as opposed to all properties, commercial properties, even though I think they're deserving. It would have less of an impact. But we got to do something about property taxes in this state. We just act in this committee like we have blinders on, nothing we can do about it. It's all about the counties. But when people pay money, they don't care if the money goes to Washington, D.C. or Annapolis, Maryland, or Cumberland, or Rockville, or Towson. To them, it's just money. And we're making Maryland unaffordable for our residents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Question from Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for bringing this bill. So as you know, I work in title, and so I see, contracts come through my desk every single day, and I've watched steadily over the last 4 or 5 years prices of homes skyrocket because of inflation and cost, and lack of inventory has been a big driver of this as well. And I've seen individual homes go up in some cases as much as, a $350,000 home go up by about $200,000 in value. And we're talking about trying to create access to housing and low entry points, and this is just an additional burden on top of that, and with the 3-year versus the 5-year. Can you talk about the impact of that tax rate going up every 3 years and how it impacts people's ability to afford a home? And I know in your situations in particular, because you're seeing those same costs increase in Allegheny County, but you're competing with 2 other states 5 minutes from you.
We do. We compete with Pennsylvania and West Virginia. They're within 5, 10, 15 minutes, and housing is growing there, not growing where we live. It's not growing in Washington County. It's not growing in Garrett County. It's growing across state lines because of those costs. But to me, I think it's crucial to remember what I'm not talking about. If you sell your property and you receive that gain, then you're still going to pay capital gains on that, both to the federal government and to the state of Maryland, unless you roll it over into another home, primary residence. There's certain exceptions to it. I'm not talking about avoiding you maximizing the value of your investment in your home. I'm talking about people who live in their homes for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, don't sell them, but just keep paying more money and more money and more money and more money. And under your scenario, if it went from $300,000 to $500,000 in an assessment, so that is a significant gain. I guarantee you nobody's income went up by that percentage. So you're talking about going up by 40%. So if the property tax rate got applied and then we bring the homestead cap, even 10%, most people's incomes don't go up 10% every 2 or 3 years. So I have the same amount of money, or maybe 5 or 6% more money in my pocket, but the property tax man for the state of Maryland and locality says you owe me 10% more. That's a net loss over and over and over and over again. And, we have to find a way, working with our local partners, to fix that.
Well, for somebody who went to law school, your math's pretty solid on this, so thank you.
It is. I've been working under Delegate Ebersol's supervision for many years now, so I've been, working on my basic 3rd, 4th grade math skills. He's got me doing better. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for the sponsor of the bill? All right, seeing none, thank you, Delegate. We do have a witness testifying in opposition. Kevin Canale, you can proceed when you're ready.
Oh, no, not Very, very happy to be here. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in respectful opposition to the bill. I do agree with the bill sponsor that we do need to work in partnership to address some of these issues at the state and the local level, particularly around affordability. But we oppose this bill because, as the delegate said, property tax is the primary source of revenue for local governments. The current triennial assessment does balance, we think, well, predictability with regular market review, and that system, again, keeps things relatively aligned. Moving to a 5-year cycle would increase that gap between market activity and assessed value. And I'll just say that counties have to fund schools and public health and other core services in real time. It's not on a delay. So our costs keep increasing every year. It's unfortunate that we are so reliant on the property tax. We're in here a lot talking about trying to find new ways to raise revenue, but we do think that this would affect not only budget planning, but also revenues and the ability to fund all the things that we fund every day. If you look at the BRFA, the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, we're on the hook for about $100 million in cost shifts or caps in this year's BRFA. We already absorbed over $100 million last year. So we're very sensitive to anything that could affect local revenues and, again, our ability to provide these core services and to, unfortunately, absorb these cost shifts from the state. We understand that the state is under pressure too, but again, we just feel like this would complicate our planning, and it certainly would, we believe, have an effect on revenues and, again, our ability to provide these services. So happy to work with the committee, with the sponsor, but we'd ask for an unfavorable report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for your testimony, and this ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1518. Next up, Delegate Arentz, House Bill 1482. I do see one witness favorable, Joel McCrea.
I do have one person, if you don't mind.
Come on up.
Okay.
You can start when you're ready, Delegate.
I got to say, it's tough following a guy like Delegate Buckle, but I'm proud to be here and want to thank you, Chairwoman Wilkins and Vice Chair Feldmark and the committee for the opportunity to present this bill. I will tell you a little bit about the guy that's going to come up and contest my bill, but we'll talk about that after the bill. Anyway, for the record, I am Delegate Steve Arentz here to present HB 1482. It's a bill established for the purposes of instituting a property tax credit rate for veterans with less than 100% total and permanent disability. Current law only mandates property tax credit for 100% disability ratings, isolating a huge number of disabled veterans from accessing any sort of these credits. This bill serves to remedy that issue by offering veterans with disability ratings from the VA a graduated property tax credit system, outlining increasing rates with accompanying higher disability percentages. With many of our veterans dealing with disabilities that prevent them from operating at full capacity, offering them and their surviving spouses a property tax credit eases additional financial burdens, allowing us to look after those who have looked after us and our country. The ratings, as I have them mapped out in the bill, are 20 to 49% disability, 20% property credit, tax credit, 50 to 69% disability, a 40% tax property credit, and 70 to 99%, 80% property tax credit, and 100% for disabled. This bill came to me because I speak to a lot of veterans group after sessions, and I met a lot of people who were disabled, partially disabled, and what have you. And I appreciate the high fiscal note, but as a past county commissioner in my county, we did something unique. We actually cut costs. We actually cut things to actually catch up to our property rates. And our tax credit system, our tax system, the way it sits now, is automatically funding these things year after year after year and giving additional dollars. And I don't think it's a big leap for us to ask to give something back to those that gave a lot for you and I. And I appreciate the dollars. I appreciate what we'd have to do, but I think this is a well thought out process for them. These people are deserving. Not all of them can actually function and do the things that people without these disabilities can. And I would encourage and ask the committee for a favorable response. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, my name is Joel McCrae. I am a past president of the Maryland State Firefighters Association and currently on their legislative committee. I'm here to testify in support of HB 1482 and to present another aspect of how this bill can support the citizens of Maryland. The MSFA represents 360 volunteer fire, EMS, and rescue companies across the state of Maryland. And the volunteer system depends on community-minded individuals to provide their time and talents to protect and serve the citizens of Maryland. Many veterans maintain a sense of commitment to their country and to their communities, and as such are valued members of the volunteer system. And many opportunities exist for veterans to volunteer beyond just riding the emergency equipment. It is unfortunate reality that the financial pressures many are facing today may not allow them the opportunity to volunteer their time. HB 1482 could provide some financial relief by requiring, rather than just authorizing, the governing body of a county or municipal corporation to grant a certain property tax credit against the county or municipal corporation property tax imposed on the dwelling house of certain disabled veterans and their surviving spouse. The assistance could make the difference in whether a veteran or surviving spouse may be able to stay in their house and continue to contribute to the community. I would like to thank the delegates who brought this bill forward. It's a much-needed bill and very welcome. And I thank the members of this committee for their time and respectfully request a favorable vote on HB 1482. I'd be glad to address any questions.
Any questions for this panel? Delegate Wims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the speaker, did you say that you represented the firefighters? Are you the president of the firefighters for the state of Maryland?
I was president of the Maryland State Firefighters Association, yes, sir.
And I did want to follow with a question. How many years were you a firefighter?
I've been a firefighter for 36 years.
I just want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
All right, any other questions? Thank you so much, Delegate.
Thank you.
That concludes testimony in support. We do have one piece of testimony in opposition. Mr. Canale.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties, respectfully in opposition to the bill. You do have our written testimony. I completely understand the intent of the bill. Several counties offer extended relief on top of state support at the local level for these folks, but I'm here because of the fiscal note. I think this is probably at least $100 million for local governments. So again, with the cost shifts that we absorbed last year, with what's on the table this year, we're not in a position to absorb this kind of a mandate, $100 million mandate on top of all those other things with rising costs in other areas and with counties being asked to do more with less. So I'm happy to work with the committee and the delegate to try and advance something to provide more support. Again, we're not here opposing the policy, it's just the fiscal note. And for those reasons, we'd ask for an unfavorable report, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Canale. Any questions? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 1482. Next up, Delegate Naraki, House Bill 1398. I do see you have Lisa May signed up.
Yes, Madam Chair, is it okay if she joins?
Yes, please, and you can start when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I apologize for the tardiness. Madam Speaker was up in my committee, so I felt like I had to stick around there for a little while, so I appreciate your indulgence today. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, distinguished members of the Ways and Means Committee, for the record, I am Delegate Ryan Naraki, and I'm requesting a favorable report on House Bill 1398. As amended, and I've submitted amendments to the committee, so those hopefully are with the committee, this bill temporarily suspends the state transfer tax from July 1, 2026 through July 30th, 2029 for homes owned by seniors. The state transfer tax is a one-time tax imposed when real property is conveyed and collected when a deed is recorded. This legislation addresses affordability, specifically affordability for seniors, while simultaneously helping working families enter the housing market. Across Maryland, many seniors are living in homes that no longer meet their needs. They want to downsize, relocate closer to family, or move into accessible housing, but the cost of selling, including the state transfer tax, imposes a financial penalty. As a result, seniors often stay in larger homes longer than they otherwise would, not because they prefer to, but because moving has become too expensive. When seniors cannot afford to move, the housing market freezes. Family-sized homes remain occupied while young couples and working families search for inventory that does not exist. Our housing shortage is therefore not only a construction problem, but also a mobility problem. HB 1398 helps unlock that mobility. By temporarily suspending the transfer tax for seniors, we remove a barrier to downsizing. Seniors gain flexibility to move into appropriate housing while freeing existing homes for the next generation, increasing supply without subsidies, mandates, or new government programs. The economic impact is substantial. According to the Maryland Realtors, each home sale generates approximately $100,000 in additional economic activity supporting small businesses, contractors, lenders, realtors, and local service providers. Increased transactions also generate recordation and transfer revenues at the local level, meaning counties may actually experience increased collections due to higher transaction volume. I also respectfully acknowledge concerns raised by the Maryland Department of Agriculture regarding funding for the Maryland Agriculture Land Preservation Foundation. Land preservation is important, and I share the goal of protecting Maryland's farmland. However, housing mobility and land preservation are not competing priorities. In fact, they are connected. When existing homes do not turn over, demand shifts outward, and development pressures move onto agricultural land. When seniors can downsize and existing housing stock is utilized efficiently, we reduce the need to build on farmland in the first place. Encouraging turnover in established communities is one of the most effective ways to relieve development pressure on rural land. Additionally, this bill is temporary, a 3-year suspension, not a repeal. The General Assembly retains the ability to evaluate fiscal impacts while also considering capturing the increased economic activity generated by higher transaction volume. More sales mean more local revenue and broader economic growth, which partially offsets the short-term revenue reduction. Many Maryland families face a housing affordability crisis affecting both retirees on fixed incomes and young families trying to purchase their first home. This bill connects those two challenges with one solution, helping seniors move when they are ready, opening homes for the next generation, and reducing pressure to develop farmland. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 1398. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Lisa May with Maryland Realtors here in favor. And this bill is reflective of a larger debate happening nationwide of how to restart and reclaim a robust real estate market. You heard earlier about the lock-in effect. Thank you, Delegate, for that assist. Of those that have mortgages of 3% or even lower interest rates, which we are not likely to ever see again. So without that lever to pull, and with new housing supply a couple of years off, even if we are successful in passing legislation this session, we need something to bridge the gap. And tax policy seems to be that remaining lever that we can pull and the way to bridge that gap between where we are today and where we are when new housing stock comes on the market. And there is a precedent for this. Following the national real estate crash in 2008, the federal government enacted a first-time homebuyer tax credit that was meant to incentivize and encourage buyers to go into a market where maybe they were a little reluctant to go. In this instance, we're encouraging sellers to come back into the marketplace, particularly those seniors who, as the sponsor said, are hanging on to homes that no longer meet their needs. We are thankful for you listening to this debate and for paying attention to this issue, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All right, seeing no questions for this panel, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We do have two witnesses signed up in opposition, Owen Bailey and Kristen Kirkwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kristen Kirkwood is across the hall testifying for Delegate Griffith's bill and appropriations. But for the record, my name is Owen Bailey. I'm the Director of Land Use and Policy for Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, but I'm also the Chair of Partners for Open Space. You have our written testimony, so I'll keep my remarks short. The transfer tax has been one of the most successful and effective investments Maryland has made in its communities. It supports local parks, playgrounds, farms, and our collective heritage. Suspending the transfer tax would reduce our community's reliance or their ability to protect land, to build new parks, to invest in our playgrounds. And I'll add personally, this past weekend, my family and I took advantage of the beautiful weather, and I took my kids to 3 different parks on the Eastern Shore. Each one of those parks has a plaque at the front of it that said this park was paid for through funds from Program Open Space. I would hate to see what would happen to our communities if that revenue, if those resources were taken away from our towns and counties. So with that, we respectfully urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and testimony. Any questions for this witness? All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, that ends the bill hearing on House Bill 1398. Next, we will go to the next bill on my list, which is Delegate Rosenberg, and then we'll close out with you, Delegate Ruth. You do have a few witnesses signed up on this bill, so let me just get to my page to see who signed up. Kurt Sivan. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Just a moment while we get, there we go. Go ahead.
Here we go. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. When you last considered what should be the appropriate tax rate for vaping, you realize the connection between vaping and our children by having the increase go to the blueprint for education. Today, we're asking you to again increase the tax on vaping, but to have the increased revenue go to the Pediatric Cancer Fund, recognizing the connection between vaping and for far too many of our children, young adults, moving on to cigarettes and the cancer issues that arise from that decision. At a time when we are seeking to create or foster additional revenue sources in our economy, there are, and I've asked Dr. Sivan this question this morning, there are doctors who have been laid off by the federal government who are researchers, who could be assisting in our efforts to address cancer among children, pediatric cancer. This bill would give us the opportunity, the ability to bring those people back into the workforce, and specifically working on what we have already identified with the creation of the Pediatric Cancer Fund as an appropriate use of state dollars, both for the economic benefit and the medical benefit for the children in the care of Dr. Sivan and others. I would urge a favorable report on House Bill 1576. Thank you.
And thank you, Delegate Rosenberg, Honorable Chair Wilkins, Vice Chair Feldman, and the members of the committee. I'm pleased and honored to be here on this rainy afternoon today in Annapolis to speak in support of HB 1576. My name is Kurt Sivan. I'm a resident of Baltimore City. I co-chair the Maryland Pediatric Cancer Research Commission, and I'm a professor, cancer researcher, and pediatric oncologist at the University of Maryland's School of Medicine. I believe that HB 1576 will achieve a real win-win for the state of Maryland and in a budget-neutral fashion. In addition to causing direct tissue damage, as Delegate Rosenberg has said, vaping initiates a highly addictive pathway to cigarette smoking, which in turn causes cancer. Increased taxation on cigarettes has been the most effective way to reduce cigarette smoking. I believe that HB 1576 will similarly reduce vaping with major health benefits to Marylanders. This is HB 1576's first win for Maryland. The second win is that proceeds from the increased vaping taxes will support life-saving pediatric cancer research in Maryland without stressing our state's budget. Despite the fact that cured children contribute hugely to society over decades, pediatric cancer research has always been underfunded. The current uncertainty surrounding federal research funding poses unprecedented challenges for researchers like me who rely on these funds to conduct research. Ensuring support for Maryland's pediatric cancer research will speed innovative discoveries and clinical trials, reducing the time to patient benefit. So both the increased tax and on injurious vaping and the sustained support for pediatric cancer research via HB 76 will demonstrate Maryland's leadership across our nation. So I respectfully urge that you approve this bill for this win-win in a budget-neutral fashion. Thank you for your consideration and your service.
Thank you so much. We have two favorable witnesses who are virtual. We're bringing them in. All right, Ms. Michelle, you can go ahead and begin.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I am the parent of a pediatric cancer patient. My family and I live in Harford County, Maryland. And I'm writing, obviously, to express my strong support for House Bill 1576 and very much appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I will reiterate everything that Kurt has already said and go on to say that my support for this bill is very personal. My son was diagnosed with metastatic osteosarcoma when he was just 11 years old back in 2018. And despite recent advances in some areas of pediatric oncology, frontline chemotherapy used to treat osteosarcoma, my son's cancer, is the same regimen that was used 50 years ago. These chemotherapies are incredibly toxic, but while they are still the best option available, they also lead to lifelong chronic conditions and often secondary cancers. So children also endure treatments at a time when their bodies are still developing, and the long-term consequences follow them for decades and decades and decades of life if they're lucky enough to survive at all. Luckily, Maryland is a leader in both research and the care of children with cancer. My son is treated at Johns Hopkins Children's Center in Baltimore, and we're so grateful for that. We owe the doctors and scientists there his life. Over the years, Nicholas has relapsed many times. He has undergone more than 40 surgeries, received frontline, second line, and third line treatments, participated in multiple clinical trials, as well as compassionate use therapies. And today he is out of options, so the time we have with him is very precious. We understand why research cannot wait. My son does not have the luxury of waiting decades for new treatments, and the most critical piece to finding new treatments for pediatric cancer is consistent funding for research. The consistency is very important, as Kurt already alluded to, and we're very, very grateful for allowing me to talk today and to encourage a favorable vote for House Bill 1576. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. If you can just state your full name for the record, please.
Michelle, my name is Michelle Erzinikock.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your testimony. Ms. Christo, you can begin.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Dana Christo, and I'm a Baltimore City resident, and I'm here to urge a favorable report on House Bill 1576, which increases the tax on electronic smoking devices and vaping liquid and dedicates the additional revenue to the Maryland Pediatric Cancer Fund. I'm a survivor of childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL. In 1976, at the age of 4, I was fortunate to be enrolled in what became a landmark clinical trial at Johns Hopkins. At that time, survival rates for childhood ALL were 50% at best. The protocol to which I was randomized ultimately helped shape the standard of care for treating childhood ALL. And I'm alive today because of research dollars that made that clinical trial possible. 3.5 years of chemotherapy side effects, painful procedures, and intermittent hospitalizations robbed me of much of my childhood. Like many survivors, I have carried the psychological impact of confronting death at a young age, and the guilt of surviving when friends from the hospital did not. Others face chronic health conditions or secondary malignancies caused by the very treatments that save their lives. Maryland has world-class clinicians and research institutions committed to improving the lives of children with cancer. Consistent and dedicated funding is essential to better understand and effectively treat childhood cancers while minimizing short and long-term toxicities, giving today's children much better options than families had in 1976. Pediatric cancer is especially urgent because it steals so many decades of life. Federal data show that cancer deaths in children ages 0 to 14 average about 70 years of life lost, compared with approximately 15 years for cancer overall. Each breakthrough in pediatric cancer prevention and treatment can return an extraordinary number of life years to Maryland children and families. Maryland has already taken important steps, including establishing the Maryland Pediatric Cancer Fund. House Bill 1576 builds on that progress by creating a stronger, dedicated funding stream for pediatric cancer research and simultaneously discourages the use of addictive nicotine products in Maryland's youth. I am living proof that pediatric cancer research is not abstract. I'm surviving and thriving. I dedicated my graduate work and early career to identifying risk factors for cancers in women. and I'm graced with a loving and supportive family and 2 beautiful children, and I'm grateful every day for the people and resources that made my survival possible. House Bill 1576 will help more Maryland children survive and live well after cancer. For these reasons, I respectfully urge a favorable vote on House Bill 1576. Thank you for your leadership and your consideration, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for sharing your story, and we're so glad to hear the good news that you are in better health. Thank you. All right, any questions for our favorable witnesses on this bill? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
We do have witnesses who are testifying in opposition of this legislation. Calling up Candace Scott and Tyler Bennett.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Tyler Bennett on behalf of the Maryland Vapor Alliance, an organization of small business vape shops throughout the state of Maryland. We are here in respectful opposition to House Bill 1576. The last thing I want to do is to testify against a bill that raises money for such an important cause. But we do believe that there are issues that concern us with the tax rate increase that will exacerbate existing issues already within the marketplace. When the rate was increased in 2024 from 12% to 20%, our members began to notice many of their retail competitors were charging less for the same products. We heard it from our customers, and upon making purchases from these other retailers, it became evident that many were not charging the proper 20% tax rate. That's the existing rate. We provided dozens of receipts to the ATCC and the Comptroller's office and subsequently met with the ATCC to discuss the issue. Ultimately, they conducted a tax compliance study over this past year, which you should have in your packet. And based on this study, they determined that roughly 65% of retailers were not collecting the proper tax rate. And if you look at page 5 of that study, you'll see that the majority were actually only charging the regular 6%, normal state sales tax rate, not even the 12% that existed prior to the last increase. This creates a competitive disadvantage for businesses that are following the rules, and the further that rate increases, the wider that gap becomes. We appreciate the time and attention that the ATCC is putting into this, but they only have so many resources. And in our opinion, we need to continue to work to address the issue of noncompliance, ensuring the state is getting the tax revenue to which they're currently entitled, and that there is a fair marketplace before looking at any rate changes. We've discussed a number of these matters with them in the ATCC, including licensing reform, changes to the existing tax structure that would make enforcement easier, mandatory penalties for noncompliance, and we'll continue to work with them over the interim. Our members play by the rules, and we want everyone else to play by the rules as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Candace Scott, and I'm a Maryland small business owner. I employ 15 Maryland constituents, and I serve on the board of the Maryland Vapor Alliance. I am here today to oppose HB 1576. I own a vape shop, not a tobacco shop, not a smoke shop. We do not sell combustible cigarettes. Our business exists to serve adult customers who are trying to transition away from combustible tobacco products. 2 years ago, this legislator increased the tax on e-liquid over 5 milliliters to 20% late in the session without a full hearing on how this increase would impact small compliant businesses. Responsible operators like myself paid the tax. Even before the increase, many retailers were not paying the previous 12% tax. When the rate jumped to 20, noncompliance became even more widespread. I paid the full 20% while some of my competitors were effectively paying far less. That made my prices appear higher, even though I was simply following Maryland law. In today's economy, customers do not shop based on price, or shop based on price. They are not evaluating who is compliant. The Maryland Vapor Alliance met with Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission and presented 52 receipts from retailers across the state. Of those, only 2 were paying the proper tax. The ATCC then conducted its own review and found that more than 65% of retailers were not paying the proper tax. When you raise taxes without ensuring compliance, you reward bad actors and penalize responsible small businesses. Increasing the tax further will not fix the enforcement gap. It will only widen it. Additionally, vapor products do not involve combustion. Combustion is what produces the carcinogens associated with smoking and cancer. Many adults use vapor products specifically to move away from combustible cigarettes. Taxing these products further to fund unrelated initiatives places burdens on compliant small businesses while undermining harm reduction efforts. I respectfully urge you to oppose HB 1576 and focus on enforcing the existing tax structure already in place. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions for these witnesses? Delegate Hornberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I did have a technical question, and then I wanted to follow up with competitiveness question. Isn't this functionality of collecting the tax a comptroller issue? I'm not understanding why the ATCC is somehow weighing in on tax collection.
Yeah, they have enforcement officers that also conduct compliance checks for underage sales, making sure retailers are licensed, but they also have the ability to enforce the tax law as well. So basically, they'll go in, they'll purchase a product, they'll look at the receipt, determine the tax rate, and if it's not correct, they'll issue a citation. They also refer those cases to the comptroller's office, and they have the authority to obviously go back and conduct audits, but it's a manpower, or a person power issue, sorry. And there's just only so many resources to go around.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. The second question is, in terms of competitiveness, we could raise it to 1,000%. However, being a border state, what are our neighboring jurisdictions charging on average?
That's a great question. So the landscape of how these products are taxed across the country and just within our own region varies wildly. Some have no taxes. Many tax it, 5 cents per milliliter, for example. West Virginia, I do have those figures written down. Delaware is 5 cents per milliliter. New Jersey is 10% plus 10 cents per milliliter. Okay. New York is 20%. Pennsylvania is 40%. They're the only ones that are higher than us.
Okay.
Virginia is 11 cents, and West Virginia is 7.5 cents per milliliter.
Okay, that's helpful.
So again, they're that's a different structure than the way we do it.
Okay, and then what's the mail order? Is mail order permissible? And
mail order is not permissible.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's not to say that it doesn't happen, of course, but it's not permissible under law.
Thank you, Delegate. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, that ends the bill hearing. Thank you. Delegate Ruth, up next, House Bill 1427. And you have Christopher Meyer signed up. Not sure if you, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for having me here. I'm here today with a package of bills that look at housing affordability through the lens of tax policy. I can see that many of the other bills today are also looking at the same thing. We all hear from our constituents about how much the cost of living is hurting them. It's bad, and particularly in the areas of energy and housing, they're really struggling. And so I know the General Assembly is working on some things in those areas, but I've been sort of taking a deep dive into tax policy and looking at how we can make it more affordable. So House Bill 1427 addresses the renter's property tax credit and the homeowner's property tax credit. I think I forgot to say this is Delegate Sheila Ruth for the record, sorry. These tax credits were created, I believe, in 1957 as a way of helping low income to, in some cases, moderate income people stay in their homes. And the renter's tax credit is based on the idea that a renter still pays property taxes. It's just built into their rent, and it's it looks at an estimate of 15% of their rent going, that's to property tax, by pass through to the landlord. And it's really intended to address the most vulnerable people, those who are living in poverty, those who are above the age of 60, permanently and totally disabled. And the problem with both of, and the homeowner's property tax credit also helps homeowners up to currently $60,000 in income, and there are various other limits. You don't, even if you have, if you're under the $60,000 limit, you may not get the full credit because there's tiers of phase out for that credit, where it's really, both of these are really losing their effectiveness. And one of the ways we can see that they're losing their effectiveness is if we look at the renter's tax credit, the number of eligible applications has declined from over 11,000 eligible applications in 2005 down to about 6,000 eligible applications. So fewer and fewer people are eligible for this tax credit. HB 1427 adjusts the various limits, including the upper income limit, the tiers for phase out, the maximum relief available for renters on the renter's tax credit. And I'm not the first person to work on these. Well, first of all, 10 years ago, these numbers were addressed in 2016. The numbers were updated. Some of the current members of this committee were on that, and that passed bipartisan, I think it was unanimous in the Senate and near unanimous in the House, but that was 10 years ago. They're still losing their effectiveness sorry, because of inflation. Others in recent years have tried to update these credits, including the vice chair of Ways and Means. It's difficult because there's a cost to the state, significant potential cost to the state. And so, we have to figure out how do we help people, understanding that it's cheaper to keep people in their homes than it is to help them after they've lost their homes and become homeless. And so we have to figure out how we can help people to stay in their home, to be able to afford their homes without, causing an undue burden to the state as well. I looked at various ways of trying to make this work a little bit better. One of the things that I did was I phased in all the changes over 3 years, so it's not all at once. And the other thing that I did here was add an upper income tax to income cap to another tax credit, the homestead property tax credit, so that the upper income cap on that in my bill is $300,000 a year. And the fiscal note makes it clear that only 150,000 people in Maryland have income over that cap. And so for those people, they would not be eligible anymore. For those 150,000 households would not be eligible for the homestead property tax credit as sort of a way to help offset the other two credits. I had hoped that the fiscal note would have more detailed analysis that would help us figure out, like, are these the right numbers, and what we can possibly change to make this work. Unfortunately, it really didn't get into that. There's not even a year-by-year breakdown of the 3-year phase-in, so it's really hard to know. It really just talks about when fully implemented what the cost will be. So, and much respect to our fiscal note analysts. I know they are overloaded as all the rest of us are, but I would hope that we could find some way to move forward to really assist people to be able to afford to stay in their homes, whether they are those most vulnerable renters or whether they are low to middle income homeowners. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, Chair Wilkins, members of the committee. My name is Christopher Meyer from the Maryland Center on Economic Policy in support of House Bill 1427. Allow me to start with 2 facts that this committee is well aware of. First, property taxes are the most important self-generated revenue source for Maryland's local governments and provide vital support for state capital investments. Second, Marylanders are facing a housing affordability crisis. House Bill 1427 would provide targeted assistance to strengthen affordability for struggling homeowners and renters while reserving the homestead tax credit for the vast majority of Maryland families who take home less than $300,000 a year. The homeowners and renters tax credits are Maryland's most effective measures to protect families from unaffordable property tax bills. But these credits could and should do more to protect those who need help the most. It's especially urgent to strengthen the state's renters tax credit. As the sponsor mentioned, while renters do not receive a property tax bill, they still pay property taxes in the form of higher rent. 41% of renters had household income under $50,000 in 2024 in Maryland, compared to only 16% of homeowners. Moreover, nearly half of Maryland renters faced unaffordable housing costs in 2024, meaning that they spent more than 30% of their income on housing. That's nearly double the share of homeowners facing unaffordable housing costs. But our renters tax credit is deeply inadequate. The credit is capped at $1,000 for all renters, including seniors and renters with a disability, and the credit excludes thousands of struggling renters, including working parents with family income $1 over the poverty line. That's a little over $27,000 for a family of 3. House Bill 1427 would double both this eligibility threshold and the credits cap, providing much more meaningful, though still modest, assistance to the families who need it most. For these reasons, I'm favorably asking for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any questions for these witnesses? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for the bill and your testimony. We do have a witness favorable with amendment, Mr. Canale.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of the bill with an amendment very similar to a previous bill you heard earlier today. We have several counties who offer supplemental credits at the local level, and so any changes to the homeowners or the renters credit, we just would want to make sure don't automatically affect those locally adopted supplemental credits. We'd also ask to be consulted on any changes to the homestead credit. I think this is a really well thought out bill in terms of trying to balance, but we would like to be consulted on any changes to the homestead credit, as again, that's something we offer locally. So with that, we'd ask for a favorable with amendments, just again to put those guardrails on the bill that nothing changes without local consent. And with that, we'd ask for a favorable with amendments, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Canale? All right, seeing none, thank you for your time, and that ends the bill hearing. Delegate Ruth, House Bill 1213. You have Mr. Meyer signed up again.
Musical chairs. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee, again, for the record, I'm Delegate Sheila Ruth, and I'm here presenting House Bill 1213. This one looks at affordability from the perspective of buying and selling homes and multi-family properties, and even touches on commercial property. The intent of this bill is not to generate revenue. The intent of this bill is to make the transfer tax more affordable for regular Marylanders buying and selling a home. For single-family homes, so I think everybody on this committee understands that the transfer tax is paid on sale of a home, and it's generally split between buyers and sellers, with the exception of first-time home buyers. And so what this bill does is it creates progressive tiers for the transfer tax. So for single-family homes, if you're buying or selling a home under $400,000, you would pay less in transfer tax, and up to $650,000, you would pay no more. That number was chosen because it ensures that everyone, the median home value as of the end of the year in every county is under $650,000. So the median home would pay no more than they're paying now. Above $650,000, this transfer tax starts to go up to balance out the cut at the lower levels. I did see the Maryland Realtors testimony where they said that there's no indexing in this, and over time those numbers are going to change. If this committee felt that adding some indexing in there would be appropriate, I would certainly support that to make sure that these numbers, don't erode over time, because we certainly don't want to hurt our, middle income Marylanders. This bill also has a category for multifamily housing. I looked a lot at how to address multifamily housing. It really seeks to encourage the development of affordable housing, because any multifamily housing development which deed restricts 15% of the units to be affordable will not pay any more than the current transfer tax, and up to certain limits, they will pay less. For multifamily housing that's doesn't have any deed restricted units, the lower costs, I think it's up to $5 million, would pay no more, and then above that would pay more. And then for commercial development, there are also tiers where the lower values would pay less or the same as they are now. And my thought, and I'm not an expert on development, I did, the Maryland builders were courteous enough to put me in touch with a developer, and I had a good conversation there. My intent with that is partially because housing developers are sometimes purchasing commercial property to develop housing on. And so I wanted to make sure that if they're purchasing like older commercial property or lower value commercial property, they pay less transfer tax to encourage, again, redevelopment, and to encourage redevelopment of, for example, aging commercial property that really can become a blight on communities when it's starting to age and lose value, and we want those properties to be redeveloped. And so I will also just mention that, as I said, that the goal of this is not to generate revenue, and I didn't really know how the tiers would break out. I do see that the state transfer tax revenues would increase under this bill, which I think is appropriate, because those revenues go to open space and agricultural preservation, which are very, very important policies, and that those are linked directly to development, because we want to preserve agricultural land and we want to preserve open space as we do development. So again, with that, I'm happy to answer questions, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and committee members. Christopher Meyer for the Maryland Center on Economic Policy in support of House Bill 1213. Maryland state transfer tax provides essential revenue that supports agricultural and rural land preservation, Maryland's environment and conservation, and temporarily the general fund. At the same time, Marylanders are demanding action to improve housing affordability. House Bill 1213 would strengthen affordability for working Marylanders while simultaneously, as Delegate Ruth said, its purpose is not to raise revenue, but it would raise needed resources to support essential services. Here's what the bill would mean for a sale of a median value home in some Maryland counties. In Allegheny County, the bill would mean a $375 tax cut. In Baltimore City, it's a $619 tax cut. In Wicomico County, that's a $690 tax cut. In Prince George's County, for a median value home, nothing would change. Meanwhile, the bill would raise $80 million in fiscal year 2027 and $449 million cumulatively over 5 years. DLS actually recommended a similar measure in its 2025 BRFA analysis. In past years, we've submitted favorable with amendments testimony on similar bills due to concerns about the treatment of multifamily housing. We're grateful to Delegate Ruth for fully resolving those concerns this year. In fact, the bill's provisions for deed-restricted properties create an incentive for developing affordable multifamily housing, which is among our most effective tools for helping working families get and keep a roof over their heads. House Bill 1213 is a win-win for affordability and protecting public services. For these reasons, I'm respectfully asking for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions? All right, thank you so much. Seeing no questions, we do have a few others signed up. These are witnesses in opposition: Hugo Cantu, Lisa May, Grayson Wiggins, Robert Enton, Lori Graff, and Matthew Pipkin.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Robert Enton on behalf of the Maryland Building Industry Association. Our trade association is the trade association for over 100,000 workers who build houses in the state of Maryland. You know, housing is a #1 priority for the Maryland General Assembly this year, as we've heard. And we feel this bill will have a very negative impact, with all due respect to the sponsor, and I have tremendous respect for her, on the building industry and on our Maryland citizens. If you look at the fiscal note, any way you slice it, it has a fiscal note of $80.2 million in '97, and that goes up to $97.5 million by 2031. And who is going to pay that? Who's going to pay it is the buyer and the seller of a home. It's going to increase the cost of housing overall in the state of Maryland by almost $100 million a year. And somebody's going to pay for it. Not the builder, not the renovator working on a house, but the seller and the buyer will pay that amount of money, any way you slice it. And that's a tremendous amount of money. The you know, I can't think, I've thought about this. I can't think of other graduated taxes necessarily that we have on things that consumers buy. You know, the sales tax is the same regardless of what the cost of an item is. The gasoline tax is the same regardless of what kind of car you drive. And this, I think, would set a very, once again, with all due respect to the sponsor, a very bad precedent at a very high cost, and that's why the building industry is opposed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. AOBA represents, Hugo Cantu with the Apartment and Office Building Association. We represent roughly 167,000 apartment rental units between Montgomery and Prince George's County, but we also represent about 23 million square feet of commercial office space in those areas. And the bill alters the state transfer tax. And while I understand the intent, and I thank the sponsor, we've chatted about this a few times. Really, for our members, we really do believe that this bill might as well be a tax increase. I mean, we're jumping from 0.5 to 1.25% on transactions of $40 million or more. That's going to be a lot of those multifamily commercial office buildings. So that's a 150% increase. And that's just not how we're going to compete. That's not how we compete with Northern Virginia. And you can see on their written, on page 4 of our written, there's some differences between Maryland and Virginia tax policies. Speaking to the taxing committee, I don't have to explain all that. We're asking for an unfavorable report because when taxes go up of any kind, permanently, buyers make those adjustments. They do the math beforehand. So these deals on the margins are simply not going to happen. And when returns are not predictable, capital moves, you see that. They're not in a silo, you see that. When you layer regulations on top of tax increases, we're seeing that happen. There's a depiction in our written that shows multifamily and commercial property sales and a drop off because of one. We are saying it's the policy of rent control, but really rent stabilization. But I say that because none of these policies are in a silo by themselves. And that's why we're asking for an unfavorable report on House Bill 1213, but we do understand the intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Lisa May with Maryland Realtors. Even though we are here in opposition, I do want to thank Delegate Ruth. We had a very good discussion with her on this bill prior to the hearing, and she did make changes from the bill as it was from when it was introduced last year to try to alleviate our opposition. Our members just still have concerns with this approach, which are twofold. Even at the increased tier amounts for this tax, we could very easily sweep up a typical family home, or in some high-cost areas, even townhomes, and more properties will be brought under these increased amounts over time as real estate appreciates. But also the fiscal note was mentioned, and it is just a really tall order right now to add another $80–90 million in new taxes to real estate sales when they are already taxed to the tune of $1 billion annually, and that is an increasing amount again as sales prices go up and real estate appreciates. So we are fully supportive of the intent. I think all of us here at this table are appreciative of the intent of trying to find a way to make housing more affordable. We just don't believe that this approach is there yet. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Matt Pipkin here on behalf of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association, also in respectful opposition to House Bill 1213. I'm not going to try to repeat some of the things that my colleagues have said, but just to kind of give you an idea of what the new scale would do. I went to CoStar, which is a prominent real estate tool, and was able to pull that in 2025. The average sales price per unit of a multifamily building is about $201,000. So again, that's a rough average. So based on that average, what you would see in a sale is for 50 or more unit properties, you'd see that increase to 0.75%, 100 or more unit properties to 1%, 200 or more unit properties to 1.25%. Again, this is just, we're talking averages. We are, as we testified last year before ENT, we are seeing a large bit of disinvestment from housing providers in Maryland. The total sales volume, as we presented last year, plummeted to $1.89 billion. That's below the 5-year average of $4.47 billion. So we're seeing shrinking amount of these total sale volumes. And to add now an increase to a shrinking sales volume, we don't think this was going to have a positive effect. So again, we respectfully understand the intent, but again urge a unfavorable. Thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So not only are we seeing shrinking sales, people are not investing in Maryland multifamily, but if a deal does go through, what happens to the increased cost of that transaction? Does the investor eat it, or is that cost passed along in the form of higher rents to the people that we talk about trying to help here every day?
The cost would have to be passed back to the state.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for this panel? All right, seeing no other questions, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 1213, and that ends the bill hearings for the day. Colleagues, we are going to vote today in 5 minutes. We'll break for 5. And okay, are we off?
Last street, we had to
Okay.
go sign the card for Jessica. Well,